Hello, is anybody there? So I'm just gonna, oh, there's one person. So this is our second Facebook Live for our Glossop Self-Isolation Puppies group. And I'm gonna be, yay, more people. Hello. Hi. I'm going to be talking about doing some crate training, and I'm going to talk about separation anxiety as well. So separation anxiety for making sure that our puppies aren't getting it, so preventing it for our puppies, and also for those dogs that they're not puppies, they're older. I'm going to talk about how how to make sure that even if we've got adult dogs, they're not developing any issues now because they are in. Can someone just message me and tell me whether this feed is okay and whether the quality is okay and the sound is okay? Just because I've noticed since I've been doing videos and stuff that the internet connection is really, really poor. And so if anyone else in the house is online, I feel like that slows it down a little bit. So if that happens, I'll need to kick the other family members off the internet. So if it is really slow, just let me know. Okay, so I was going to talk... Okay, thanks Alyssa, thank you. It's been a bit of a battle of me going, can everyone get off the internet so I can upload a video and things like that. Anyway, so I was... Thanks Megan. I was going to talk about socialisation. There's just so many things that I want to get over to you in such a short period of time. And so lots of things have come up as I've been getting to know you all. So someone I was just talking to now, obviously we need to get the socialisation plan in place. But a few people are already, hi Helen, a few people are already having issues with crate training, getting their puppies used to crates, and they're worried about separation anxiety issues as well. So we're going to talk about that today, and then we'll do socialisation tomorrow because I want to have a bit of a handout ready for tomorrow as well. So I hope that's okay with you guys. So we're going to be talking about crate training in terms of how to introduce your new puppy to a crate, what a crate is, why you'd want to use one. And then, as I said, we're going to talk about making sure that we're preventing any issues with separation anxiety. So we'll get started. So crate training is something that I did with Joey. Crate training is basically teaching our puppies and our dogs to be happy and settled in a little bit of a den space. So if you Google crates, or kennels for dogs, you'll see all sorts of different things. So some people will call it an indoor kennel. I tend to call it a crate. We have still got a crate, but it's being used as a guinea pig hutch at the moment, so I can show you, but there's guinea pigs in it. The best ones I tend to find are just the really simple metal ones. You can get soft crates as well, and I've got a soft puppy crate which I use for in the car for travelling, but they're not as sturdy. They say that they're sturdy, but they're not quite as tough as a wire crate. And with most of the metal wire crates, you can kind of fold them down so they flat pack quite easily so that you can move them around as well. So with a crate, you can get them from anywhere really. Obviously, it's going to be online at the moment, so you're going to be looking at somewhere like Amazon. I had a quick search for somebody earlier, and looks like they start at about £15 to £20 from Amazon for one of the basic wire ones. And hopefully Amazon are still going to deliver, and we'll be able to get them if we need them. Other things that you're going to need are you're going to need some towels and blankets and things to try and make it nice and cozy as well. I probably wouldn't, in fact, I definitely wouldn't be splashing it out on any fancy beds or anything like that to go in the crate, because they're going to get dirty, they're going to get chewed, they might get weed on, they might get pooed on. It needs to be something that you can really easily shove in the wash, tumble dry and have back out again. So I remember when we used Joey's crate, you can't do it now, but I ended up going to one of the charity shops and asking them if they had any old towels and sheets and blankets. They just gave me a load, and then that did then for lining the puppy crate. So it needs to be cozy, but obviously it needs to be practical as well. The other thing that I'd highly recommend is a bowl that fastens onto the side of the crate. So if you put a regular bowl on the floor, your puppy's just going to step in it, walk around, knock it all over the place, and the bedding's going to end up absolutely soaking. And you can get just a plain metal bowl that sits in a hoop that attaches to the side of the crate. So it's raised off the ground and it's sat in this hoop and kind of screwed to the side of the crate, so they can't knock it over. They're still able to get to the water, but they can't knock it over. So definitely recommend getting one of those, because when you are at the point where you're going to be wanting to shut them in the crate, we need to obviously make sure that they can get a drink of water whenever they want. And then the other thing that can be helpful as well is a blanket or a sheet to go over the top of the crate. So it covers it over and it makes it into a little bit more of a cosy den. It's going to keep all the warmth in so that our puppies and dogs are staying nice and warm in there. It's going to shut out too many distractions as well. So that's kind of all of the equipment that you're going to need. What I would say as well is, if you've got a dog that's going to be a larger breed dog, so Joey's 25 kilograms now, we ended up having to have 2 crates. So we had a small puppy crate for him hi Debbie, we had a small puppy crate for when he was tiny, and then I think when he got to about 10 months we ended up having to get a bigger crate because the small crate wasn't any good anymore. And unfortunately you can't just get your big crate. So sometimes when you're buying one, they'll recommend that you look at how big your dog's going to be as an adult dog and get that size crate. But if you get one that size and you've got a tiny little puppy at the moment, that big crate's just going to completely drown them. It's going to be far too big for them, so that they're not going to have that cosy feeling. And then the other problem is that one of the reasons that we're going to be using our crates is to help with toilet training. And that goes on the idea that our puppies generally are clean. Most puppies don't want to go to the toilet, wheeze or poos in a crate, in their bed area, because then they'd have to sleep in it. So they don't want to have to do that. I have met dogs and puppies that are quite happy to lie in their wee and their poo, but the majority of puppies don't want to do that. And if you get a small crate that's it only really needs to be big enough for them to sit up like full height and do a full... Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you. So it only needs to be big enough for them to sit up tall, so that, the top of the crate shouldn't touch the top of their head. And then they should be able to turn a full circle round, and that's it. That's all they need. If you have it any bigger than that, what they'll do is they'll sleep down one end, and then down the other end of the crate, they'll use that as their ensuite. And they'll go to the other end of the crate, do their wheeze and poos there, and then they'll go back to bed. And it's quite hard to get them out of the habit once they get started with that. If they learn that they can use their crate as a toilet, it's hard to get them out of that habit. And also it's not helping them to learn to hang on a little bit, to cross their legs a little bit for the toilet until you let them out of the crate and let them out into the garden. So you want to go with sort of a smaller one rather than a bigger one. And then when they get too big for that, then you can upgrade to a bigger one. I don't think you should need to get more than 2, because by the time you upgrade to your bigger one, they've normally got the hang of the toilet training by then. So size-wise, so long as they can stand up, turn a full circle, that's big enough. Anything bigger is going to be too big for them. Some crates I've seen, in fact, a client's crate actually, I think you can divide them. So that can be helpful. You can get one big crate, you can divide it in half to start off with, and they just use one half, and then as they get bigger you can move the divider. So that's another option as well. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking for from a crate. So a crate isn't a place for punishment. It's not somewhere for a timeout. It's not like the equivalent of your naughty step. It's not somewhere to put them if they've just done something that you don't want them to do. It needs to be a safe, cosy place. It's their den, it's their happy place. It's somewhere for them to go and settle down and sleep. What I would do is I would make sure that that's their only bed as well. So it's very tempting to get carried away with all kinds of lovely, soft, cuddly puppy beds. But one, it's a waste of money because they're just going to chew them anyway. So I wouldn't get too carried away with buying beds at this stage. But 2, if they've got the choice between the crate and then a lovely cosy bed next to it, they're going to go in the lovely cosy bed next to it. So we need the crate to be... that is a good idea, Debbie, actually. Yeah. So if you've got a big crate, you can put a cardboard box on one end to block it off. They might chew it, but it's worth a try, isn't it? What was I saying then? Can't remember. Nice cosy den, using it as a safe place. Yes, the only bed in the house. Thank you. So you want to have your crate in the room where you're going to be spending the most of your time. So it might be in the kitchen, it might be in the living room. It needs to be somewhere where you're going to be walking past it quite frequently so that your puppy doesn't feel shut out and they can watch what's going on. Because if it's somewhere out of the way, they're not going to want to go into it because they're going away from you and they're worried that they're going to miss out on something. So we want it to be nearby, but that needs to be the only soft place that they can go to. Sometimes even if there's like a rug or a mat on the floor, if that's closer to you, they'll choose that over the crate. So we really want the crate to be their bed. We want them to have all of their naps in their crate. Any settling down time, it needs to be in their crate. It doesn't need to be a crate and then a choice of other beds as well. That's their only bed. Some sort of tips to help them get used to it. So feeding them meals is a really good one. So you're going to be feeding them 3 or 4 times a day, aren't you, when they're puppies? And for most dogs, meal times are a really good time of the day. They're something that they look forward to. So feed them in their crate. So put their food bowl actually physically in their crate. So they have to get in the crate and eat their food in there. I wouldn't be shutting the door, leave the door open, but put the food bowl in their crate so that they're eating in there. You can hide treats in there. So especially if you've got blankets and things, I will be... One thing which I quite like to do is when they're not looking, hide treats in there so that every time they walk past, they smell treats and then they go in and they find treats in there. So they think, oh, this is brilliant. Every time I come back here, there's treats in there. So make sure that you're doing that. And then any play sessions that you're having, I would kind of centre them around the crate. So you can do things like throwing a ball into the crate for them to go and get, throwing a soft toy in there, playing tuggy games in there. Anything like that which is going to really develop that positive association so they see it as somewhere nice to eat. Yeah, that's a good point actually, Sophie, and I did have that written down. For some puppies, and it wasn't just your puppy, Sophie, it wasn't just Gunnar, they find it harder if they're in the family room and they can see everybody. So for some puppies it is better to have the crate out of sight. It's a little bit of trial and error. Yeah, I don't think there was anything that you did wrong. I think it's just try it and see. I would start off in the family room or the living room or the kitchen. Start off there. If they're finding it too difficult to settle in there because they can see you and they can't get to you, then you can think about putting it in a different room instead. So I would try with you first, but then if out of sight's better, that might be the way to go. We had our crate for Joey in the living room, but it was sort of at the other end of the living room. So it was out of the way, but it was still with us. So it was that kind of good balance, I suppose. So in terms of getting them used to being in there, obviously if it's the only bed, hopefully they're going to be napping in there. And when they first start doing that, you're just going to leave the crate door open. So you don't want to shut the door on the crate too soon. I think that's a big mistake that people make. As soon as their puppy's in there having a nap, they shut the crate door, and then when the puppy wakes up, they see that they're locked in and then they panic because they can't get to you if they need to. So I wouldn't be shutting the door probably for the first few days. You really want them to settle in, get to know you, build their confidence around you, get to know their surroundings as well. So when you do shut the door, you want to do it for a really short period of time. And you can do it while they're napping, you could do it while they're eating, or you could do it while they're having like a filled Kong toy. So one of the things that we talked about yesterday, and one of the handouts from yesterday, was feeding your meals in activity toys like Kongs and canine connectables and things like that. So if they are having an activity toy, what you could do, and what I used to do with Joey, is give them the Kong or activity toy in the crate, and then whilst they're eating that, you could just shut the door for a second and then open it again. So to start off with, it's literally just shut it for a second and then open it again. That's all you do. So they don't feel like they're trapped in there. They don't feel stuck. They don't start to panic. And then from that point, you then start to build it up really, really slowly. So seconds at a time. One thing I like to do is once they're in there is every now and then drop a treat into the crate. So they're getting rewarded for staying in there. If they protest, so if they start whining or scrabbling or scratching to get out, that means that we've pushed it too much and we've left them too long. Basically, we've done 5 minutes when really they were only ready for 30 seconds. So it means that we need to make sure that next time we do it for a shorter period of time. The other thing to do as well would be to try not to open it whilst they're making that noise. So wait for a gap, even if it's a tiny little gap, for a second, and then open the crate door, because we don't want to teach them that if they scrabble and bark and whine, they get out of the crate, because they're going to use that again in the future. So try and wait for a tiny little gap, then open the crate door, and then let them out afterwards. So sometimes what I think is really helpful is almost to have a bit of a chart where you're writing down, right, 30 seconds was fine, 1 minute was fine, 2 minutes was fine. And then you can build on that each time you're doing it. And it needs to be little and often. So keep doing it regularly. I would be doing it several times a day. It's not just a once a day thing. It needs to be little and often. So half a dozen times a day, I would be playing in there with them. Obviously, you're feeding them their meals in there. Give them an activity toy in there as well. Hide some treats in. Give them something and then just shut the door for a few seconds, then open it. So sometimes when they go in there, the door's shut. Sometimes when they go in, the door's left open so that they're not too worried about it. If they're napping, you could shut the door, but you need to keep an eye on them so that as soon as they wake up, you open the crate door before they start making a fuss. You don't want to be in the next room and then wake up and panic and think, oh my God, I'm all on my own and I'm shut here. And then they fuss and then you go open the crate door. You need to kind of see them stirring, first of all, maybe sit up and then open the door before they actually start making any noise or anything like that. These are all things that are going to prevent them from becoming unsettled and anxious in the crate. What treats can an 8-week-old have, Helen? Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Lots of puppy treats that you order online, they say, don't they? They say not suitable for under 12 weeks and things like that. For training treats for tiny puppies, one of the best things to use is if you're feeding them a dry kibble, just use their dry kibble because that's going to be nice and small. And obviously it's made especially for them. One thing that you can do is if you're feeding them one particular brand of food, you could get them a really small bag of another brand of food and you can have that as your treats instead. And especially if it's, obviously when you've got a tiny puppy, they're going to get filled up quite quickly. So you need the smallest treats you can find. So you can get like a puppy size kibble and then that's going to be nice and small for them. They should also be fine on little tiny bits of plain cheese, plain chicken, plain sausage as well, just cut up really small. And if you're going to introduce anything like that, make sure that you introduce one thing, so like a little bit of cheese, and just keep an eye on them for 24 hours afterwards, just to make sure that it doesn't upset their stomach. And if that's fine, obviously then you can try introducing something else. But while they're this age, I would just go with either their regular kibble or a different flavour or a different brand of kibble, obviously a really good quality kibble as well. So hopefully that answers that. So other rules for when we're using the crate, once we know that they're happy and they're settled in there and we can shut the door, for a few minutes, then we're going to start to build up the time that they're settled in there for. So things that you need to make sure, one, you need to make sure that they've had a walk, obviously. You need to make sure they've been to the toilet as well. You never ever want to put them in the crate if they've got a full bladder or if they need a poo. You need to make sure they've been to the toilet first of all before you shut them in there. I would always give them something once they're in there. I'm just going to move it because the sun's right in my eyes. It's lovely having the sun, but not right in my eyes. There we go. So whenever we put Joey in his crate, we always used to give him like quite a big biscuit, so it wasn't something that was just gone in seconds, or we would give him a filled Kong, and he loved his crate. He got to the point where you got a Kong out or you got a biscuit out and he just ran in his crate straight away because he was waiting for you to give him his Kong or his treat. And that's the sort of response you want. You want them running in there straight away. We walk, I don't think she's on here. We walk a very, very lovely Labrador puppy who, when we leave her, she goes in her crate, and pretty much as soon as you get the treat, she's running in her crate and she's sitting there waiting for it because she knows that that's the routine, and she knows that we're going to be shutting the door, shutting her in the crate with a treat. So make sure they've got something nice to do in there. Any sort of safe toys as well. So make sure if you leave them with any toys, I wouldn't be leaving things like soft toys just in case they start chewing them. You don't want them de-stuffing toys and then eating bits of them. So nothing that they're likely to swallow. Obviously, they need to be safe. So if it's any toys, I'd probably supervise them with them first of all, and then make a decision about whether they're safe for a crate or not. So we used to have Kong toys, and we used to have the the hard Nylabone chews as well. They were always really good, solid ones that we could leave in the crate that we knew they weren't going to get chewed up or eaten or anything like that. And then your water as well. Obviously, I said before about making sure that you're leaving a water bowl in there. Sometimes vets and trainers will recommend taking the water out of the crate overnight, but that's more if you're struggling with your toilet training. So as a rule, I would always leave water in there unless toilet training is an issue or it's going too slowly. or they're starting to toilet in their crate or something like that. So yeah, generally you want to leave some water in there. Wouldn't necessarily leave like a bowl full of food. I would just leave whatever treat or activity toy they've got for that particular meal. In terms of sort of in the long term, I would be looking to build up to a couple of hours. That's a first sort of really good milestone to get to, because in a couple of hours you can go for a run, go and do your shopping, you can do bedtime with the kids, things like that. So just build up to a couple of hours. The most you want to leave them in the crate for is no more than really 3 or 4 hours. So if you think about people that are at work all day and they're using crates for training their puppies, they might kind of shut them in the morning, so they're there for the morning. Someone comes at lunchtime and takes them out again, so they've got 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and then they've got a break, and then 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon as well. So even if you're not out, you can still use it for a couple of hours in the morning and a couple of hours in the afternoon. And sometimes I recommend using your crates for naps. So once they're happy and settled in there, sometimes, especially if you're at home, as we're all kind of working from home at the moment, and when you've got the kids at home as well, which everyone has as well, they won't necessarily realise that they're tired and take themselves off for a sleep or a nap. So what you might need to do is you might need to say, right, it's nap time, and you go into your crate and settle down there. But obviously these are things that you're doing once you know that they're happy and settled in the crate. You're not going to do that straight away. You need to make sure that they're okay in there before we use it for nap times. Other things that it can be good for are if you're just busy. So if you're busy and you can't be keeping an eye on your puppy, that's when a crate is really helpful. So if you're cooking, if you're eating, if you're cleaning, if you're on the phone, if you're not focusing on them, you can put them in their crate with something then. And it just stops them doing something that they shouldn't be doing and then having to work around that. Potentially it's safety as well, because they could be chewing something that's dangerous. They could be chewing electric wires or something like that. And that's why I really like using a crate for if you're out of the house. So if you're out the house, the safest place to leave them is the crate most of the time, because there's nothing dangerous that they can get to. Obviously, I said it helps with your toilet training as well. Any teething or chewing phases that they go through, they're not really going to be able to destroy your kitchen or your furniture if they're in the crate. When you've got small children, it'll be really helpful then as well. Not just to give the kind of kids a break from the puppy, but to give the puppy a break from the kids. And if you have got children, I would really work on teaching them that when the puppy's in the crate, it's off limits. They shouldn't be putting their hands in. They shouldn't be going over and talking to it or anything like that. If the puppy's in a crate, it needs to be left alone. They need to learn the crate isn't a toy, and it's not something for them. So that's kind of, it needs to be do not disturb once the puppy's in the crate. The other thing which I personally found the crate really useful was if we were travelling. So we always go on holiday in this country so that we can take Joey with us. And the first time we went on holiday with him, we went to the Lake District, and he was about 3 or 4 months old. And I remember being quite anxious about it, because often, and I don't know whether other people will have found this, when you book a dog-friendly cottage, the rule is always it needs to be toilet trained. And I think he was 3 or 4 months old. And when we booked it, we thought, yeah, he'll definitely be toilet trained by then. And he wasn't fully toilet trained. So I was a bit on edge thinking, oh my God, we're going to go to this cottage and he's going to wee and poo everywhere. And they're going to end up asking us to, pay to clean the carpets or something like that. But actually it was fine, because we took the crate with us. So we flat packed the crate. We put it in, I think it was in the corner of the living room. And that solved our toilet training problems. But the other thing that it also did, it really helped him settle, because it was something familiar. So it was almost like we'd brought his bedroom with us, basically, hadn't we? We'd brought the place where he sleeps. We brought his bedroom with us on holiday. So when we asked him to go in it, he just straight away was like, oh, yeah, familiar with this. It smells the same. This is my room. And he settled down really well. And that's been the same whenever we go on, whenever we've gone away. When he was younger, when he was under 3 years, I would say we kept the crate until he was about 3 years old, just because he was so settled and happy in it and liked it. And if ever we went anywhere, we'd just take it with us, because he'd just go in and he'd sleep and he'd settle down and sleep overnight straight away. So that's other benefits. You can also use a crate for if you're traveling with them. in terms of sort of car safety, using like a travel crate is one of the safest things to do. I've got one in my boot, which is it's a specific dog travel crate. It's not just a regular crate. When they're small, you can get away with using your puppy crate because you can just put it on the back seat or on the front seat next to you. But as they get older and bigger, you sometimes need a specific one to fit into your boot. And it just means that they're safe then in the car. They can't, run around in there. They can't climb all over you when you're trying to drive, so that you can concentrate. And most dogs, because they're enclosed and they're not kind of sort of swaying all over the place, if they're on the back seat or something. Hi, Nicola. If they're on the back seat, they can kind of wobble all over the place, can't they? Even if they're on one of the car harnesses that plugs in, there's still a lot of movement there, whereas in a crate they're confined and they can't move around quite so much, so it's easier for them to settle down then. So crates in the car is a really good idea. As I said, I've got 2 crates. I've got a big crate in the boot for Joey and for adult dogs, which is like a big metal solid one. And then I've got a soft little fabric puppy crate for when the puppies are tiny. But as soon as they're big enough, I like to get them in the crate at the back because it's much more solid than the puppy crate, and they're less likely to be able to chew their way out of it. So even though the fabric crates are nice, I just don't think they're obviously not as tough. They're obviously just more kind of susceptible to being chewed. So I think that's everything I wanted to tell you about the crate. So why we're using it: for safety, we're using it for a safe place for them to go to, for a den, somewhere for them to rest. You want to start off building it to maybe 1 or 2 hours, eventually getting to maybe 3 or 4 hours at the most. You don't want to leave them in there any longer than that. It needs, I think, oh yes, Sophie, yes, he managed to chew his way. Sophie's dog Gunnar, when we met for a walk a couple of weeks ago, I think had managed to chew his way out of a fabric crate. So yeah, they're not as sturdy, there's our evidence. So lots of different uses for it. It needs to be a positive place. It never needs to be a negative place. I do sometimes use it, not for timeouts, but just to get them to calm down. So often when they start being silly, it tends to be in the evenings, and it's because they're overtired and they start kind of doing that running around, that really giddy, silly behaviour. They start jumping up and biting and things like that. And often it's because they need to go to sleep, but they're fighting it. So you can use the crate in that situation. But as I say, we need to make sure that they're happy and they're settled in there first of all. It's never, you've chewed me, you're going in there as a punishment. Because if you start using it as a punishment, you won't also be able to use it as a safe place. You need to focus on using it as a safe place. That we shouldn't be punishing our puppies anyway. Yeah. If once you've worked on it, you put in a lot of work early on, but if you do that, you'll get to the point where they absolutely love their crates, and that's where you want to get to. So before I move on to the sort of separation anxiety stuff, just quickly, does anyone have any questions about the crates that I've missed out? I'll give you a few seconds. Any crate training questions? If you think of anything afterwards, obviously feel free to just add it to the comments of this video or ask in the Facebook group. Either of those is fine. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about is trying to make sure that our dogs aren't developing separation anxiety, and it does go hand in hand with the crate training. Generally, if they're happy and settled in their crate, they won't mind whether you're in a different room or whether you're going out of the house, so you don't end up having to worry about separation anxiety. So how soon should you start using the crate, Amy? Straight away. So I would have it set up even before your puppy comes, set up in the corner, get all your blankets out, get it nice and cozy. So as soon as they're there, they can start going in and out and investigating. You can start feeding them their meals in it straight away. You can start getting them happy going in and out of the crate straight away. You can start throwing toys in. So remember, we're not shutting it. We're getting them happy going in and out of it and happy settling in it and using it as a bed first. And then we're starting to shut it. So you can start getting them used to it straight away from day one. Is there a point where you would stop using it? As I say, we kept ours until, I think it was till Joey was about 3. And in fact, thinking about it, it was probably when I was pregnant with Thomas in terms of space, and we just thought you know, a crate for a full-size Labrador is pretty big and it was going to take up some room and we needed loads of baby paraphernalia. So we thought we're going to have to get rid of this crate. I normally recommend people hang on to it until their dog's at 18 months or 2. A lot of dogs will be happy without the crate sooner than that, but I think people sort of think, right, we've nailed the toilet training, they're 6 months old, it's fine, that, you know, they're going to be okay not being in their crate anymore. But a lot of dogs will carry on chewing and doing destructive behaviours up to a year old or even up to 18 months. So I would probably keep them in the crate until 18 months to 2 years and then see what you like, what you think. The best way to sort of test it is do some scenarios where you leave the crate, but you just start to tie it open, so you can kind of tie it open with the cable tie type things, leave it open, and that way you've still got it there to go back to if you need it. You can just test the waters a little bit and see whether they are okay going in and out of it. And then when you replace it with a bed, I would put it in the same place so that they're happy with that. So replace it with a bed in a similar place and take some blankets from the crate that still smell of them so they can settle it. Sometimes if that transition's too big from crate to bed, you can make them a little den under a table. So if you could put a table, you definitely don't want to be letting a 6-month-old puppy out of its crate yet. But some people do. So yeah, if you could put a little table or something in the area where the crate was, then you could put the bed under the table. You're sort of replicating the crate a little bit, so it's not such a shock for them. I normally cover it on all sides except one. So I normally have one side which is clear, which is the one with the door on, so I would leave that clear and then I would cover the rest of it. You can cover it fully overnight. One thing which tends to happen, sorry, the sun's following me around and I'm trying to move away from it. There, okay, let's try that for a while. So one thing which you might find is obviously the morning's getting earlier. So if the light is waking them up in the morning, sometimes covering the crate just mimics that darkness for a little bit longer, because obviously you don't want them waking up earlier and earlier as the mornings get earlier and earlier as well. Because often when it's light, they think, oh, right, I need the toilet, I want to get up. So sometimes overnight you might want to cover it fully so that it's dark, and then when you're ready for them to get up, then you can open it up. So that can sometimes be helpful. I'm just clicking to read the rest of Sophie's comment, because our crate is more out of sight. We've been trying to get Gunnar to settle down on it. Could this? No, I think that's fine. I think so long as you're using the crate, you've already put in the work with the crate, you know he's happy and settled in it, that's absolutely fine. As long as once they're happy and settled in it, you could probably introduce another bed or a mat or a blanket or something like that. But I would still make sure you're using the crate every single day. So you might want to use the crate overnight and then once a day at least during a meal time or something. And then you could, in the evening when you sat watching TV, then you could do your settling on the mat with you. So long as you've got them spent that time doing what I was talking about before, where we're getting them settled and happy in the crate and they're really comfortable in there, once they're going overnight in the crate and they're absolutely fine in the crate overnight, then you could start to add in a second bed as well. What you don't want to do is kind of stop using the crate altogether, because then it'll be difficult to get them going back in there afterwards. The other thing to mention is you don't have to use a crate. I know a few people that have used sort of like a playpen type thing. I think you did that, didn't you, Alyssa, with Sandy? So it's just a confined area, basically. It's a confined area for them so that they can't go wherever they want to. Okay, so I'm going to move on to talking about the separation anxiety. So if you're using a crate, I think this is probably less likely to happen just because you're more aware of it. So separation anxiety is a horrible, horrible problem where our dogs get really stressed and worried if we go out of the house or if we go into a different room or if we leave them. And generally, if a dog's got separation anxiety, they kind of almost have a panic attack every time you go out. So they'll be doing things like they'll be toileting everywhere because they can't control their bowels. They're panting, they're salivating. A lot of dogs will bark and whine and make noises. A lot of dogs will try and escape. So they'll dig in corners or chew at furniture to try and get out. But it is like a panic attack. It's not just a little bit of a whine or a little bit of a protest. It's a really big deal. Problem with separation anxiety is, I would say, I think it's probably the worst behavioural problem to have to work on with your dog, because it's very, very hard to deal with it once it happens. If they do develop separation anxiety, especially if you leave it for quite a long time and don't work on it, you're talking months and months of work, if not years of work, to try and overcome the separation anxiety. Yeah, shredding surface is a good one. And for some dogs, you're never going to overcome it. Some dogs with separation anxiety, no matter how much training you put in with them, you can never solve it. And so that's the reality of it. And you end up either having to be with your dog all the time, or have someone with your dog all the time, or rehome your dog to somebody that can. So that's why it's so important that we prevent it. So I think while we're off, what we need to try and do as much as possible, I know we're not off, we're working from home, is try and kind of keep a little bit of a routine going. And I know I'm trying to do that because I've got Thomas off school, and I'm trying to kind of have a bit of a, right, we do these lessons in the morning and we do this at lunchtime and da, 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 da. So I think those of us with kids are a little bit more used to having a routine because they tend to do better with it. We need to be doing the same sort of thing with our dogs. So things that can help is making sure that you're keeping your walk at a similar sort of time to what you'd normally do, walks and activities. So if they go out morning, lunchtime and evening, I will be walking or doing play and activities with them at similar times, so they know that these are the times that something is happening. And then in between that time, they should be settling down and nothing is happening then. So if you're normally out of the house sort of 9 till 12 and then 1 till 5, I will be trying not to do anything with your dogs during that time, or at least a similar amount of time. So make sure that there's a couple of hours in the morning and a couple of hours in the afternoon where you're not available to your dog. And that could be you sitting working and kind of ignoring them. It could be shutting them in the crate. Or you might need to go into a different room of the house, or you might need to go upstairs so that they can't see you. And that way they're still used to the fact that they're being left for periods of time, and they're used to the fact that at these periods of time they should be sleeping as well. Because if they don't know when you're going to take them for a walk or when you're going to get some treats out and do some training with them, they're kind of going to be expecting it almost all the time. They're going to be sort of following you around thinking, oh, when's the next fun thing going to happen? Whereas really you want them to know, right, I've had my walk, I've had my treat, I know that you're not going to do anything with me, so I can happily nap now for a couple of hours without the worry that I'm going to miss out on something amazing happening. You might need to go upstairs so that they can't see you. And the other thing that can be helpful as well is pretending to go out. So this is going to be tricky, isn't it? Because if we're only allowed out once a day, that's going to be our dog walk. So our once a day is going to be them going with us. So it could be that they're with us for, 24 hours a day. So you might need to sort of literally go out the front door, open the door, shut the door again, and then go upstairs so that they think that you've gone out, but actually you're upstairs, and they're getting used to that door sound. You could even go and sit in the car. You could, make yourself a cup of tea, take a book, go out, lock up like you normally would, go and sit in the car for half an hour as well. So it seems daft, but these are all going to be things that are going to help your dog when we do get back to normality. If we have, months and months of time where you're with your dogs pretty much 24 hours a day, they are going to be much more likely to develop problems when you go back to work again. So we need to do silly things like sitting in the car, pretending to go out, going and sitting and working upstairs so that we don't end up with problems later on. Obviously, if we're doing shopping, they're going to be on their own, but, we're not going shopping as much, are we? We're not nipping out as much as we would. So I would be trying at least once a day to do something where they're on their own or where they think they're on their own, okay? So if normally when you go out and leave them, and this is more for older dogs that you've cracked your crate training or they're happy and settled in a particular room with your older dogs, I would be shutting them, doing what you'd normally do when you leave them. So we used to, with Joey, we used to shut him in his crate and then we'd go out. So I could go into a different room and he'd think I'd gone out and left the house. When he was a bit older, I used to ask him to go on his bed and give him a treat. And he wouldn't necessarily stay on his bed, but because that was the routine, he knew that I was going and I was leaving him. So I think it's really important to keep your routines in place. Other things that you can do just to sort of trick them into thinking that you've gone out, like getting your bag ready when it, obviously not now, I've had a walk with a t-shirt today, it was lovely, wasn't it? But things like putting your coat on so that they do feel like you're going out, and then you know, you could just go upstairs then, but it's lots of little things that are familiar sort of cues or triggers to tell them that you are going out, they're going to be left on their own, and it's making sure that we're replicating that every single day as well. So that's going to be the best thing to prevent us from having issues when we come on the other side of this and we are allowed to go out and about. Because it's almost, if you think about it, it's almost going to be cruel if we're with them the whole time for the next 3 months and then we're back to work 9 till 5 again and they're on their own. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for problems, isn't it? So we need to carry on pretending to go out, making sure they're having their naps at their regular times, spending time in different rooms, upstairs, downstairs, even go in the garden, leave them in the house, go out the front door, walk round, go and sit in the back garden while the weather's nice as well, just things so that they're left on their own. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. So we've talked about crate training and we've talked about preventing separation anxiety as well. I am going to do, so I did a handout, didn't I, yesterday to help you with your sort of your routine to keep them busy while you're stuck at home. So hopefully some of you have downloaded that and found that useful. And I've also put the Boredom Busters course on the group as well. So what you need to do for that is you just need to click onto that and then there's a code to put in and then that'll give you access to the Boredom Busters course. So there's, at the moment, there's 3 videos on there and there's 3 handouts as well, and I'm going to carry on adding to that. So you can all access that. And then for today's session, as I say, I'm going to put a bit of a handout together in terms of how to get them used to the crate and also how to make sure that they're happy and settled on their own as well. So I'll either put that on tonight or I will do it tomorrow for you. Okay, so before we finish off, does anyone have any questions? So you can type your questions in the box below if you've got any. As I said before, if any questions, you know, if you think of something later that you wanted to ask me, you can just write it on the comments for this video and it'll pop up for me, and I'll be able to reply to it then. Okay, it looks like no questions. Okay, as I say, I'm still there, aren't I? I'm not going anywhere, am I? No one's going anywhere. Okay, so I will do same time tomorrow, and I'm going to have come up with a bit of a socialisation plan. I have got some new socialisation workbooks coming. They were supposed to be here last week. My printers are normally really good and they do next day delivery, but with everything that's going on, obviously it's been slowed down a little bit. So I'm really, really excited to show you them and kind of get them out to you. Really want to make sure that you've got them so you can be working through this socialisation plan. But because of the way that we're doing it, some of the things in the plan aren't going to be applicable. So I'm going to need to do sort of updates and things. So I'm going to have those ready for us for tomorrow night so that you can be cracking on with your socialisation straight away. Even those of you that have literally just picked up your puppy or are about to pick up your puppy, you'll still be able to get started on your socialisation straight away. And we're just going to have to be a bit more flexible about how we do it and change things that we're doing. One of my favourite socialisation challenges to do is to go to a dog-friendly pub, and I always say that on week 1 of training class, and everyone's always really delighted with going to a dog-friendly pub as your homework. So yeah, once a week take your puppy to a dog-friendly pub, but we're not going to be able to do that because no pubs are open. So sadly that's going to be out for now, and we're going to have to be a bit creative about thinking about different things instead. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that's been helpful. Anything that you want to ask, just go ahead in the group. It's lovely getting to know you. I'm really enjoying your puppy pictures. Keep sending me them, because basically your puppy pictures are the only things that are sort of getting me through this, because I'm absolutely just so missing my puppy cuddles at the moment. I really am. So yeah, keep putting photos, and I will see you in the group, and I will speak to you same time tomorrow. Okay? Bye.